line that was designed just to be provocative until Tehran. Now hopefully it is evocative. What we think is happening here is that the tipping point in terms of the communications tools. Does the green line indicate that it's on?
Here, I've learned this with our mics. Move it up. Yeah, keep it high up, guys. These are, there you go.
I'm the only soft-spoken political consultant in America, so excuse me. We're at a tipping point where the tools are not just going to change how we talk to voters and how voters talk to us. We're at a revolutionary point. And it's not going to be just slow any longer to the extent it's been slow before, but it's happening now immediately, and it's changing campaigns, not just cycle to cycle, but literally we're finding in a gubernatorial campaign that we're running in California month to month. Next slide. Oops. Thank you. Okay, so we're not just here because Theo used to work for Simon and did such good work for Simon. We're here because 18 months ago, Theo and I went to lunch and we started planning out a statewide campaign in California where there are now 40 million residents. And the first question we asked ourselves is, how are we going to communicate with half of the audience that we expect to opt out of political dialogue by June of 2010? That's DVR penetration. It's only about 33% nationwide right now. But our projection is that in a Democratic primary in California in 2010, more than half of the voters will have decided not to watch any commercials, and certainly not to watch political commercials. It's an operating belief in our firm that amongst the half that are still going to be there, political communication itself is quite debased. So to the extent that you're even watching political ads or reading political mail, you're not particularly likely to be that affected by it. So we're here partially because we have to be here. We have to go where the voters are, and the voters are going to social networks. And we're also here because we need to be here, because our candidate, in this case Gavin Newsom, didn't want to make things easy. He didn't just want to win the election to be the next governor of California. He actually wanted to be a good governor of California. And he believes, and he's asked his campaign to adopt, the type of campaigning that's going to allow him to do that. And the mere broadcast model in which we ask people to join us, but then we don't give them the tools to help us, has broken down. And that's what we're trying to do with Twitter, and that's why we're here.
So if I can just stand here,
yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So just some quick numbers to give you a sense of where this is. Twitter the fad, right? This is the next thing. It'll be over shortly, and no one has to worry about it. Well, that's not exactly true. As you can see by the numbers here, this graph is a growth chart of Twitter's growth in the last 6 months. As you can see, it's pretty much a straight-up hockey stick curve. And in March, Twitter surpassed the New York Times, generally the paper of record, for the most unique visitors, just slightly over 20 million. Twitter has about 196 million visitors a month, about 20 million unique visitors. I'll just say that again, 196 million, pretty large number. So scroll ahead, there's, sorry about the watermark, there's a couple factors that are driving this that are underlying the growth of what's going on with Twitter, and Simon alluded to them, so I'll be brief, but this stat is really important, I think. 30% of all the people who are accessing the internet are going to be accessing it from a mobile browser. That's current statistic. Now, that doesn't include your email on your BlackBerry or your text messaging, right? That's just actual internet browsing using your mobile phone. And so as PDAs and the growth of PDAs becomes more prevalent, this number is just going to continue to accelerate at a rapid rate. And then there's the whole idea that a social network is for kids. Our youngster here is demonstrating. That's just simply not true anymore. If you look at Facebook and the demographic growth, the 35 to 54-year-old demographic on Facebook in just the last 6 months, right, just 6-month period, grew 276%. And the number for people above 55 and older, which is not up here, is 194% in the last 6 months. Facebook is averaging about 500,000 new users a day. Right. And we'll give you some comparative statistics about old media later on. But, I mean, this is clearly not, you know, a passing fad, and it's no longer for kids anymore. It's as Simon said, you know, now that your parents are on it, the kids are going to have to move to Twitter.
You know, when voters moved from the 4 broadcast channels or 5 broadcast channels to the 500 cable channels, we had to change our tactics in political communication, but we didn't need to change our strategy because fundamentally it was an evolution. It was a very, very similar way of communicating. It was the broadcast model. Well, this is so different that we're going to need to change the very grammar that we use to communicate with voters and consumers because it's not broadcast media anymore. It's personal cast media. And I might be able to buy the military channel and find some voters who might vote for my candidate, and it's incremental. But they're not on those channels anymore. They're on Theo's channel. And so what I need to do, because I can't buy Theo's channel, he's not for sale at any cost.
It's very exclusive.
Yeah. You need, we need, our candidates need, and our causes need to earn our way into those channels. And it's not for sale. It's something that we're going to have to earn.
Can I add one quick point? The stat up there about 66.8% of internet users visiting social networking sites, just to put that in context, that's bigger than email. So more people actually use social networking sites now than actually use email. And so what's going on when you enter the web, it used to be that you'd go to a site like Yahoo or you go to a portal, a public portal basically. Everyone is now basically developing their own customized entry point into the web. And Twitter is the next evolution of that, and we'll talk about that. But the world in which you see when you go online now isn't a world that everybody else is seeing. It's your own world. It's your friends. It's your content. It's your photos. It's people you want to connect and interact with, and they're customizing your point of entry.
You all probably have Marshall McLuhan and Tony Schwartz at your bedside reading about communications theory. Put it back on the shelf. Okay, that's based on the broadcast model. And media has now become so decentralized, and not just by Twitter, but by Twitter, Facebook, and what's going to come after Twitter and Facebook, that we're going to have to understand that it's not from few to many. It's from many to many others. And that's going to change the way we think about how to communicate. And we need to start adopting ourselves. We don't pretend to have the answers. We're still in the exploration phase, but we're learning a lot of important lessons in a campaign that is essentially socially network-driven in many respects. But we already know enough to understand that the basic rules of communication theory are changing.
So one of the most important things that's happened to us, or sort of we've learned in the last 6 months, and was our operating theory going into this for the Gavin Newsom campaign. So the title is, the networked conversation, what's more important, the hub or the spokes. So, there's conversations going on out there about your candidate or your issue or, about Gavin Newsom. And there are millions of people on Facebook, and there are millions of people on Twitter, and people are on ActBlue, and they're on YouTube, and they're in these communities all around you where they're having conversations about you, hopefully with you. But if you're not going to engage in those places where those people are, you're simply not going to be part of that conversation. And we were talking earlier, right, about message discipline, which Eric was saying came out of this sort of the cable era as you had more channels. You're never going to control this message, and that's not the idea. You have to participate in it. But your website now, if you're in a campaign, right, the Gavin Newsom site, that's not where most people are talking about Gavin Newsom. Right? They're talking about it on Twitter. They're talking about him on Facebook. Right? They're posting comments on our YouTube videos. They are actually in the communities where they exist, and you have to be in the center of those communities and participating in those network conversations around you, or you're not participating in the conversation about your campaign, and you risk ignoring it at your peril these days. this is just, we'll talk a little bit about some of the common, get into some of the details of Twitter here. This is an actual tweet from Shaq. Live the life you imagine. Geez, I suck at typing, laugh out loud. So, we put this up. Shaq's got a huge following on Twitter, and it's apparently quite funny, but as you can see. But I mean, just some of the common misperceptions about Twitter is it's about this, right? Took a sip of cup of coffee, put cup of coffee down, picked cup of coffee back up, had second sip. Boy, was that good. And it does. There is that is going on Twitter, but that's not really what the emerging reality of Twitter is. And Nico will talk a little bit more about this, but this is the emerging reality of Twitter.
And we'll let that speak for itself, and others speak to it. But they come for the gossip, they stay for the revolution, and that is what's happening. Well, just to summarize a little bit about the forum itself, it's happening all the time. You don't need to go back home to talk about what's happening here. You can talk about what's happening here, and you can shape this conversation right now. People are coming to it because it's for them. They're shaping their own channels. Their online experience is now exactly the way they want it to be, and they frankly prefer to have it the way they want it to be than the way we want it to be. So they're leaving our sites and forming their own. Clearly, it's a tool of democratization, and we're going to talk about that. It also creates total chaos. It also is going to put political consultants, some of whom out of business, and it's going to have Simon talking about this for years to come, and it's going to totally change the world as we know it, but we're already seeing that it's shifting power from Washington, from the political establishment, to these millions of channels. The campaigns themselves can, should, and frankly must to survive, be in this environment to use it as a rapid response tool and as a message accelerator. Gavin Newsom was on the cover of the New York Times Magazine a week ago, Sunday, but more people saw that because we tweeted about it than the people who went down and paid the $6 to get the Sunday New York Times. So it's a pointer to other content. And it's mobile, so it's everywhere.
So Simon asked us to talk a little bit about actually how you technically do this. So a couple of slides here about how to actually build a following. So let's say you start out from just a few of your friends, or you have your campaign. You really want to sort of create your conversation. You create your community. How do you do that? So you want to follow opinion makers in your state, other Democratic Party elected officials, reporters, different interest groups that you care about or that are of interest to you. You should also follow issues that matter to you, and there's conversations going on Twitter right now all the time. They're happening right now while we're sitting in this room, I'm not part of it, on issues that matter to you. And California, just a couple examples, Prop 8, it's a big one, obviously, the gay marriage initiative. Prop 13, which is a big initiative to potentially reform the property tax, prison reform, the budget, which in Sacramento is a complete mess. You're going to want to follow those issues, people that are talking about those issues that matter to you. You can also search and follow people, find people that are talking about you. And then you should follow specific hashtags. Hashtags are basically the pound symbol. You've all seen the pound symbol next to something on Twitter. Half you're like, well, why is that pound symbol there? I used to ask myself that question too. What's that pound symbol mean? Well, it's basically a tag, and that's how conversations are linked together. So anybody talking about pound Gavin Newsom, that's all public record, organized together for you to search for it, and you can actually follow and be participating in an actual conversation, all completely open on Twitter. So if you have specific tags that are of interest to you, like the Personal Democracy Forum, which happened last week, or there was a tag for the Democratic Party Convention in Sacramento, so you could follow all the tweets around that. So you should follow specific tags. And then, sort of the basic organizing rule, right? Put the link on everything you do. I can remember when people started putting their websites, on letters they were sending out, and it was like, oh my God, we've got to put the website link on the letter. Great idea. Well, you should put your link to everything too. And then a little bit about how you engage on Twitter. I've got a lot of questions about, like, so all right, so I got on this thing now. What do I do? Well, that's how you build out your following. Okay, so once you start to build out your following, and I'm following these people, and what will happen is they'll start to follow you back. Well, then what? Okay, I'm here. What do I do, right? So you want to listen and participate in the conversation. It's not, it's not a tool to just drive information to people all the time. People will stop paying attention to you if you're just constantly forcing information down their throats. It's a two-way medium, and if you're just pushing out information all the time, they'll stop listening. So you got to listen, and you have to participate in the conversation. Retweeting and driving people to specific links. I mean, one of the real powers is you can actually send out a real tight URL and drive people to that specific link that you want. In our case, we can do it to 750,000 people in an instant, which is pretty great for the campaign. You want to ask questions? Yesterday, we tweeted a post and we said, we're having a town hall in the San Fernando Valley. We're going to take a question from Twitter. Go ahead and post your question. And we got, hundreds of questions on Facebook and Twitter for people that want to, can't be there but would like to have their question asked. Be personal. Newsom, the mayor, talked about his new wife expecting their first child on Twitter, which got a really big response. So you should go back and forth between sort of campaign-oriented or policy-oriented work stuff and sort of also, what's personal to you. And maybe not quite as personal as Shaq, but you get the idea. And then give people the chance to organize for you. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And then the last thing, I know a lot of people ask me about fundraising on Twitter. I mean, you have to have an absolute rock-solid immediate deadline to raise money on Twitter. It's a brand new tool. People are just starting to figure it out. But if when you've got 3 days to go, I mean, that might as well be in 2012 if you're on Twitter, right? So really uptight immediate deadlines for Twitter, for our experience, are working the best. And we're figuring that out through trial and error. I mean, when we had a few hours to go, people really started giving. But when we had 3 days to go, they're like, 3 days from now, it's might as well be next year.
I've only been in town 24 hours, and more than 24 people have come up and said, no, Twitter, that's that silly thing. And there was a lot of dismissiveness, I think, here and elsewhere, because it is personal. But one of our lessons that we're learning is don't be afraid to be personal. Simon was one of the stars of the War Room, right? And more people saw the War Room than worked on the Clinton campaign, as many people as worked on the Clinton campaign. In fact, people are interested in the day-to-day running of a campaign. As long as you use that judiciously, there's nothing wrong with giving people an insight into what's happening in your campaign because they're interested in it. At least many people are. The other thing is, I don't know why we're afraid to ask people their opinion in campaigns. We spend millions of dollars, literally tens of millions of dollars, on qualitative research every year in campaigns. Focus groups, mall intercepts, dial tests, to ask people their opinion. Well, social networking allows you, albeit in a less scientific way so far, but it allows you to ask people their opinion. And people are willing to give their opinion. And you know what? We're getting many, many informed opinions. It's not just chatter. We're learning things every day, every hour from the questions that we're asking. Now, having spent a brief part of my career in direct response, I tend to still think about the ladder of engagement. Newsom's got 750,000 people following him on Twitter. And part of what we need to do and other campaigns need to do to make this effective is to follow that ladder of engagement and move people from followers to supporters. He's got 54,000, just about 54,000 people supporting him on Facebook. And many of those came from Twitter. He's got just shy of 5,000 donations on ActBlue, and many of those came from Twitter and Facebook. He's got 3,000 people already agreeing to volunteer in his campaign. Now, this is a huge nation state in California. There's no way we could afford to run the kind of field campaign we want to run if we were doing it in a traditional fashion. But because we're doing it virtually for free, we've been able to go out and already recruit an army of volunteers. And then we're taking folks from all of those areas and we're turning them into Facebook and Twitter captains so they can start the process again. So move people up the ladder and then use people on the ladder to increase your pool of supporters.
So this is just a quick chart about at Gavin Newsom, which is Newsom's name on Twitter, for our growth. As you can see, that's a pretty steep climb. We announced the campaign on April 21st. We had 255,000 people following us on Twitter at that point. We now have 738,000 people following us. We're adding about 45,000 people a week.
And please, don't hesitate to follow Mayor Newsom if you're interested in his campaign.
That's right. You feel the need.
Yeah.
So, are you going to?
You know, in the old days in California, which again is a very large state, you would announce by doing a media fly around. And if you were from Los Angeles, you would announce in Los Angeles, and then you would fly up to San Francisco, and then to our state capital in Sacramento, and then up and down the Central Valley, and it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you probably would talk, if you were good and lucky, to hundreds of thousands of people. Gavin Newsom announced with a new media fly-around. He announced it at 8:30 in the morning on Twitter, and then we emailed out to the 250,000 members of our opt-in email list. And then we put up a YouTube video, which so far has been seen by about 40,000 folks. And then we went to Facebook and ended the day there. It was a new media fly-around that cost nothing and reached more than 5 million people. And it didn't just reach them. Again, it allowed them not just to hear that Mayor Newsom was involved in the campaign, but to get involved in his campaign. And but for the last day of our finance filing in California, the announcement day was the single biggest day of online donations. People didn't just see, they joined.
But just to give you a number, you know, Ashton Kutcher, our favorite person on Twitter, he retweeted, said, have you seen at Gavin Newsom is running for governor? At the time, that reached 1.2 million people. Lance Armstrong did it, another 600,000. I mean, you know, the viral nature of this thing is unparalleled. I mean, those are 2 million people we would have never gotten to. So this is one of the, you know, we've been saying we've been learning as we go along. Well, this is sort of one of the big learning moments for us. So after the announcement, we went up to Sacramento for the California Democratic Party convention, and we had a meeting with 35 bloggers, right? It used to be that the bloggers were disintermediating any of the newspapers, and oh my God, they don't even wait to the next morning to post their content. They're just posting it whenever. Those crazy people. They are destroying our system. So we had 35 bloggers in this meeting, and this is actually a Twitter interaction between 3 of the bloggers in the meeting during the meeting itself. No one actually wrote a blog about the actual meeting itself. I take that back.
D-Day wrote.
One blogger wrote a story about the hour and a half they spent grilling Mayor Newsom, but they were tweeting during the entire meeting, which we actually didn't anticipate. When we were there, all of a sudden we realized, oh my God, they're tweeting during the meeting. Not only are they tweeting during the meeting, but they're tweeting back and forth to one another about what's going on. And it's all public. And you can see the little note there, someone is smitten. So it's both personal and Julia Rosen finally got to ask a question, and she'd been, a couple of earlier tweets, she had been saying that the mayor gave old media a question first, and then she got to ask her question. She wrote, hard not to smile when he's talking at you. And so somebody else wrote back to Julia during the meeting, someone is smitten, you have this trail of tweets. So it really was a tweet up, not a blogger meeting, but that was completely unintended. But that was a big eye-opener. And for our initial reaction was, well, what are we going to do? We're going to have them stop tweeting. And then we thought, well, we can't ask them to stop tweeting. They'll just tweet that we told them to stop tweeting.
Yeah.
So, that'll be even worse. So I guess we're having a tweet up, which is what we did.
And we're going to stop asking people to turn off their phones, which is wreaking havoc with our broadcast system. Our microphones don't work anymore, but we're getting a lot more audience from our events.
So, and you can see actually, that's an example of a hashtag right there where it says #CDP09. That's the California Democratic Party convention. That was the tag for Twitter. So if you search for that, you could follow the entire conversation on Twitter about the convention. So this is just one of our early organizing tools that we tried. We've got all these people on Twitter, and we're working through and figuring out how to use it. And we created Twitter captains, and we asked people on Twitter to come off Twitter onto our website and sign up to be a Twitter captain and organize for us around using the medium. And so we just did this recently. One of the first things we did was Follow Friday, which is a popular game. It's a trend on Twitter. Every Friday, people do #Follow Friday, and then you list a few people that you think are interesting that other folks in your network should check out. And so we asked folks to that were Twitter captains to have everyone follow Gavin Newsom for a day. And we've been averaging about 5,000 a day, and we doubled it on the day that we did that. So this is a quick example of another organizing. This is our tweet raiser that we did. So you can see at the bottom there, right above Simon's head, where we retweeted Chelsea Lately. She's I don't know if you watched the show, Chelsea Lately, Chelsea Handler. She's got over 1 million people following her on Twitter, and she's a supporter of the mayor. And she wrote, "I refuse to use the word tweet raiser, but I guess this is. Click to donate $10. So we write back, "Thanks for the support." And then, as you can see going up, that's sort of our real-time updates of how many donations we are. Short of 4,000, can you give $10? And updates as you go along, leading into the June 30th deadline. And then at the top, you see the thank you. Right? We actually raised a lot more than 4,000 donations, which was more than we thought.
What now? It's as we said, it has serious implications for how we run campaigns, but we've been talking over the last few months about how it's going to have serious implications about how politicians run their administrations. It used to be that campaigns, when they were over, they were over. Nothing was left. I mean, maybe your fundraiser got the fax machine and took it home, but that was all there was. Actually, we were just polling in California, and there was a candidate who would spend $40 million in his campaign in the last election. It's now at 2% in the race. Even the money that you spend on media is very perishable. But these networks that we're provoking and that we're trying to lead will exist after the campaigns are over. And they're going to exist to the benefit of the politicians, and they're going to exist if the politicians want to change their minds about certain policy promises and ideas, to their detriment. It's here. It's not just going to be used for campaigns. It's not going to go away after the campaigns. So those of you who have politicians as employers, or those of you who are politicians, get ready, because it's not just for your campaign. It's for your entire term. And as we're seeing, the members of these social networking communities are not afraid to use that power to hold politicians accountable.
Yeah, we're going a little. Told we're going too long.
Yeah. Okay.
So just real quick, you want this?
Here it is. This is the opt-in campaign addressing the opt-out world. Right now, nationwide or worldwide, Daily Kos has 186,000, San Francisco Chronicle 312, Los Angeles Times 723. This is viewership. New York Times, HuffPo 1.4 million. Gavin Newsom sometime at the end of this week will go over 1.4 million people that he can reach in his opt-in universe. 40 million people in the state of California. So we have a ways to go. And not all these people are in California, and not all of them can vote. But we're working to make sure that we're organizing people that will agree to communicate with us so that we can communicate with them. And finally, what's happening here is, in many respects, a return to the status quo ante. Before the broadcast model of communications, American politics essentially involved the ability of everyone to stand up and be heard. Not everyone was heard, not everyone was listened to, but everyone had the opportunity to participate in the debate. It's not a broadcast anymore, it's a conversation. And we have a model for that. And what we have now is a conversation with the American voters. And if we want to participate in that, the candidates and the causes that participate in that are going to be very powerful. And the candidates and the causes that refuse to participate in that are going to be left behind.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.